Nitzen here today to show you about the 5440 or fight block, which is an interesting background. In the 1840s, it was a slogan used in the British American land dispute in the Pacific Northwest Territory of Oregon. Now, ironically, today we're going to be using the Downton Abbey fabric from Andover Prints, which we safely can use today because that dispute has long been settled. So just kind of an interesting block history. But today we're going to use our Sizzix fabi machine. We can use the Big Shot or the BIGkick. Or if you have the Big Shot Pro machine, it works beautifully with that too. So let's go ahead and get started dissecting this block and start cutting right away. So what we have first is we have a 4-patch unit right here with the purple and the cream with the print. And then we have a unit here, which is the Isosceles triangle with the background, which some also refer to as a triangle and a square unit. So we'll be cutting both of those units out today. So we have 5 different 4-patch blocks, and then 4 of the star blade blocks. So let's get started today cutting out our 2.5-inch squares, and we'll cut out the purple first. And the reason we're going to cut the purple first is because on the cream we need that for the background piece that shows here in the points. So we'll go ahead and cut the purple first, and then while we have the cream print out, I'll show you how to do the background as well. So when you put your fabric on top of the die, you want to make sure that the fabric covers the die area but does not go over it. If you do too far over on your fold or your roll, then you could be wasting fabric. And you know, fabric is beautiful. We want it to last forever, so let's try not wasting any of it. All right, we've got 3 pieces on top. I've got 4 2.5-inch squares that we're going to cut out each time. So that gives us 12 units. We really only need 10, so that's fine. We'll use the extra at some point, I'm sure, in another block. Put your cutting pad on top. Fold the excess fabric underneath the die, nice and flat, and place your cutting pad on the bottom of that. So that's your Sizzix sandwich. Cutting pad, die and fabric. We want to put that in the machine, give it a couple of quick turns, cut those squares out, and we will place them as we use them here in the corners. So after we have the last 2.5-inch square cut, go ahead and put it into place. And then while we have that cream print fabric out, let's switch dies to the Isosceles triangle die. And on this die, we have 2 shapes. We have the triangle shape, and then we have the background piece that will make it the triangle and a square piece. We want just the triangle in this case, because if you look at the block, that's where our cream is in the triangle and not in the blade point, which would be the background. All right, so we're going to cut out, we need 4 of these triangles. So 1, fold the fabric over, makes 2, fold the fabric again, makes 3, fold the fabric again, makes 4. Put your fabric and die into the machine, a couple of quick cranks of the handle, and we will have our perfect triangle shapes. Now, if I were going to cut out more of these, I would simply take my fabric as it is here and flip it over so that I mirror that triangle shape and I don't waste any fabric. But in this case, we're just going to cut out for the 1 block today. All right, but in the future, that's how we would cut more. All right, let's put this aside for now. We have our triangle background pieces cut out. We're going to lay them out. 1 there. Oops, goes that way. And facing inward. All right, now we need the black print. And on the black print, we want to cut out the background piece. And in this case, we want them in pairs. Now this is very important with the background piece. You need to cut out mirror images. So whether you face your fabric right sides together or back sides facing, either way you're going to end up with a mirror image ultimately. So it is very important that you put your fabric right sides together. I'm going to face it towards me, and I believe if I just fold this over into fourths, we end up with the proper height, which is true. Now in this case, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pairs. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's fold that fabric over one more time. Go ahead and put it into your machine. A couple of quick cranks of the handle. Now take your pieces, and with your mirror images, you're going to lay these out. I always get all of my cutting done first, and then come back and sew my units together. Now let's just double check against our pattern piece here that we have our blades facing in the correct place. We have our cream print going in one direction and our purple print facing in the other. Let's go ahead and start making some blocks. Let's start today with the 2.5-inch square blocks that's going to make a 4-patch unit here, 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 and then down here at the end. It doesn't matter if you have them upside down or backwards. You just need them, of course, right sides together. When you come to the last one in the segment, you will notice that you have them one up and one down. Sew that one more time, and that creates your 4-patch block. And I always fold my seam allowance over and nestle those two together right there on that intersection. I drop a pin right in there. Your edges should match up on one end and on the other end. And then give that a quick sew, and you'll repeat that 4 more times. Will make your 5 blocks here. Give those stitches right here a little snip. You're going to open that up, and then you're going to give that a quick finger press, or you can take it to your ironing board and give it a hot press real fast. Keep these seams laid out flat, and that's your first 4 square. Now it's time to show you how to sew that isosceles triangle to the background piece, or some people call this at this point the triangle in a square unit. So this is the piece we're going to sew together. The triangle and the background piece are already dog-eared for your convenience. To put those together carefully, line them up so that the dog ear is flat. On the other end, it's not going to be perfectly centered. You will have some overlap on the back side. That's okay. The one end will be perfectly matched. Okay? Take that to your sewing machine and give it a quick stitch. Remember that you're on the bias at this point, and be careful not to stretch your fabric in any fashion, whether it's the triangle or the background piece. Just give that a quick 1/4-inch seam, as always, all the way to the end. And I'm going to show you how we're going to press this, but we're just going to sew the one real fast. When we press this first one open, before we sew the next side, you want to finger press and then take it to your iron. This will help you in the end to have your block lay perfectly flat. Okay, then we're going to take this one and we're going to do the same thing, matching up the top so that that perfectly matches in that dog ear, right? And then you're going to match up the bottom end as well. Now, the bottom end it doesn't match up exactly, and that's perfect. It's not a problem at all, okay? But the top you need right on, spot on. When you put it in your machine, make sure that that open seam stays flat, all right? Now, I don't put any pins in it, but if you feel comfortable putting pins, you go right ahead. Give it your 1/4 inch seam. And if you need to realign it halfway down, you go right ahead and do that. Take your time with it. All the way to the end. You're going to repeat this to all 4 blocks. When you get this one finished though, you're going to also open this seam up. Put your finger in the middle there. And give it a quick press, and that will alleviate some of the bulk at this point here. Give that a press with your iron, and then go ahead right now and sew up the other 3 blocks, placing the triangle and a square units, or the isosceles triangle units, out. Make sure that your points are facing inward and not outward. You would get a totally different block that way. All right, our next step then is going to be to sew these units together. So I will take the first row to the second row, put the second row right sides together on top of the first row, match up your corners, and with using the dies and your 1/4 inch seam, those points should match up perfectly. You should not at this point have to square up anything. Go ahead and put that in your sewing machine and give it a 1/4 inch seam right there on that edge. Making sure that your folded pieces where you've pressed them open or closed or in one direction or another, make sure that those seams are right on. Now this piece here looks a little short, so we're going to give it just a little stretch here. Using that 1/4 inch seam is going to get you with those points just in the right spot. Line this back up, make sure we've got all of our pieces going in the right direction. Open these up. And I chain sew those and leave those threads connected until I'm finished with the block. It helps me ultimately get this together. So just make any last minute changes if necessary. Perfect. Okay, let's give that a quick, taking the whole thing up with me, and match up your seams, top and bottom. And again, if your 1/4 inch seam wasn't just perfect in one spot or another, go ahead and give it a little stretch. Next one, open that up, right sides together with that last row, perfectly matched at the top. One last check before we sew it in the other direction. Okay, let's give it one last. And in this direction we want the center seams. So we're nestling our seams just like we did in the beginning with the 4 patch. So we want one seam facing towards my left hand and the bottom seam facing towards the right hand. And we'll do the opposite as we get to this corner here. So this one, the bottom would be facing the left and the top will be facing my right. Give it a quick sew, making sure that your seams match up in one direction or another. If you've carefully folded them in one direction and stuck the pin in there, why, make sure that it goes that direction when you get it into the machine. Okay, cut your threads off, and there is your block. Double check, oops, we had it upside down, that your pattern is going in the right direction. Clip your threads off. We'll want to open up this seam in the back. See how the seams are open in the back? Clip these little tiny threads, and your block is ready to go. I sure hope you enjoyed the 5440 or fight block today. Happy sewing.